welcome to my session of today, Azure Purview. My name is Erwin de Kreuk and I'm working as a lead data and AI for InSpark. That's a Microsoft partner in the Netherlands. And beside that I'm a lead, I'm also a data platform MVP. So as InSpark, we help organizations to accelerate their digital transformation with an impactful Microsoft solutions and expertise. So the only thing we do is Microsoft Azure and nothing else. And the only thing we do with on-premise data is to pick it up and to bring it to the cloud. Today, we're going to talk about Azure Purview, the unified data governance to maximize your value of data. And if you look back to Azure Purview, and besides, if you have questions, what Benny was saying, please feel free to ask them or to unmute yourself and do ask the question. If you look to the history of Azure Purview, I think a lot of people already know that somewhere, I think a year or 4 or 5 ago, we started with Azure Data Catalog Gen 1. And I think it was somewhere in June 2019 that Microsoft did an acquisition on Blue Talon. So they bought Blue Talon. And the first things you have seen with that Blue Talon was coming in the first Gen 2. But like we have always a Gen 2, and then we started more and more in the private previews, and then the whole Blue Talon was integrated into Azure Purview. And I think it was December last year that this September last year that Azure Purview went GA. And Microsoft has now with Azure Purview his own data governance and data lineage tool, and much more, which I will tell you a little bit later on. And besides that, I'm really curious what the future will bring on this topic. So what kind of position will Azure Purview take compared to, for example, Colibra, Informatica, Glue Data Catalog, or other data governance products? As we all know that, my screen is not clicking, that we all know that data is our most strategic asset. If you can see that I think 90% of the corporate strategic have their information or most of the data is already in their environment. And by the 2025, you will see that mostly, I think 175 zettabyte data will be generated. So there's not only normal files, but sensor data, connected devices. There are so much data coming in. And the great thing, I think already Benny named it already as well, data governance is becoming more and more increasingly interdisciplinary. So as a chief data officer, which is a corporate officer, and that's the one over the person who is responsible for enterprise-wide governance and the utilization of information as an asset via, for example, data processing, analysis, data mining, or and other information meanings. But he's also the one who will start using Azure Purview, for example, to get more and more answers on what he is, where his data is coming from, what kind of data do I have, what is the origin of that data? Can I trust that data? That's very important as well. But also compliance. If you look to the compliancy side, is getting more and more important as well. With all these new required regulations from the local government or industries, for example, all these ISO normations or NEN certifications, they are very important, and that makes also your data. How can you make your data compliant? And you want also to have control on who can access and use that data, so that not the wrong persons are using the data in the future. So more on the right side, we have the data compliancy, the data access, security, privacy. That's more the compliancy side. And on the discovery side, we have more like we have data managementship, the data engineer, the data scientist, all different roles who are start using that data. So many people are using data, and you want to track these users. If you look to a couple of elements which can create a successful data governance, is that you want to have control on your managed. You want to have control on your growing data landscape. More and more, you will see that that there are operational silos are coming in, and these silos, I think, is a normal base that, okay, my finance department, they have a data set, my HR department has a data set, and that person is using Excel, and there are so many assets living in around the globe or in the data estate of that company that you want to have control over what is happening, but also how you can create more a single version of the truth and to have that inconsistent data sets managed. But you also have to increase the agility of your data, and what I already said, how can you comply with these industry regulations? And most of these elements, Azure Purview can help you a lot with this. If you look to Azure Purview, we have a couple of components in there. First of all, we have the Azure Data Map, or also named the Elastic Data Map, where we can automate and manage our metadata at scale. So that's your foundation of Azure Purview. There you can connect to the on-premise data sets, you can connect to SaaS applications, you can connect to Amazon, to Azure, to Oracle, whatever multi-cloud there is, you can connect to. And in there, we can create all our scans and ingestion of the data. So that means that we can scan, for example, an Oracle database, that we can scan a SQL database, we can scan MySQL database, Postgres. Everything we can scan to classify our data to see what kind of data is living there. So if people are uploading, for example, CSV files to our blob storage, and there is trusted data in there, so for social security numbers or credit card numbers, that we can define these assets and that we know, okay, listen, in this file, we do see credit card numbers. So you have to do something with that to get it not exposed to the rest of the organization. On top of that data map, besides that scanning and data lineage, on top of that, we have the data catalog. Oh, there's something going wrong. Sorry. We have the data catalog. And the data catalog that helps you to discover all your data. To get that search that you can easily search. Okay, I want to search, for example, for customers. In which files can I find customers, or in which Power BI dashboards can I find customers, etc., etc. But I will show you in a bit in a demo how that will work and how easily it will be to start searching for data within your data estate. And so also you can define your business glossary. So, okay, this field means that, and that, so that people know what they are talking about. What kind of business rules are applied to this field, for example, and to who can I ask, who's the expert of the data, who's the owner of the data. All this kind of information can be assigned in the data catalog. And on top of that data catalog, we have the data insights. And the data insights make sure that we have a kind of reporting on top of Azure Purview, that we can see, okay, I have done so many scans, and so many scans are failed or are canceled. I have, for example, so many files of Parquet files, CSV files, PDF files, the more the file types. And I can also search on specified catalogs or classifications. And in the future, you will see that on top of this Azure Purview, they will integrate more like policies, privacy, data quality, but also master data management will follow in a while. And a couple of these like policies and are already integrated in a private preview, which I can show you a little bit at the end of the session today. All of that is Azure Purview. If you look to Azure Purview more in detail, it is what I already said in the beginning. It's a unified data governance to maximize the value of your business. And actually, you can define these data governance in 4 pillars. So more the data governance, the foundation, the value for our consumers, but also what I already mentioned before, how can I get insight across my data estate? And if you look more in depth to these 4 pillars, you will see that what is very important for me is I want to have a solution which is cloud native. So I don't want to have maintenance behind. So I don't want to have Windows servers or Windows virtual machines running there, which I have to manage. So I want to have a managed environment. It should be serverless. It should be scalable. And I want to have a platform as a service data service. And also, how can I eliminate these manual and ad hoc homegrown solutions to get more decent solutions which everybody or every department can easily use? The second one is more the foundation. So how can we make sure that we can automate and discover data of all these different sources? How can I classify data, or how can I specify the sensitivity of this label? Because with Azure Purview, we have also an integration with Microsoft 365, where we can define the sensitivity labels and which we can be picked up by Azure Purview, for example, for your Power BI datasets or for your SQL server tables. And you want to know where the data is coming from. So the data lineage. So I have my source, I do some transformations, I have my destination, and I have my data sets, reports, and dashboards. And I want to know from my dashboard the whole flow back where the data was coming from. That's very important for a lot of companies to see where the data resides. The third one is also very important. How can I create more value for my business? Because when the business wants to have something, you can grow easier because they have to adopt the products you're using. And but also the different roles. So how can a data engineer easily work together with a data scientist on the same tooling? So a data engineer will create these, for example, these data sets, but a data scientist wants to know, okay, I have some questions regarding this data set. Who can I ask? Or what does this field mean? More the business glossary. And we want to deliver a curated and consistent glossary of these business terms so that I know, okay, this is the sales amount because the sales amount is field A minus B or plus C, for example. And I want to easily find that data as well. And the last one is more the inside one to see what kind of assets are there living within my estate, what kind of scans, what kind of business glossary, and what kind of sensitive data is in there, which I didn't know in advance. If you look more to these different Azure Purview features, so there are a couple of elements in there. The first one I already explained a little bit. We have the Azure Purview platform, and we have that elastic data map. So that is a dedicated per customer and on shared infra. So it's not dedicated infra, but you have your own part. And it will always start with the default capacity of 1 capacity unit. What does it mean? I will explain a little bit later, also together with the pricing, so that you have a couple of a little bit of feeling with how the pricing of Azure Purview will work. And like the scanning, if you don't scan anything, you're not paying anything. So that's really serverless. If you scan every day, you will see that your cost will increase. And if you only scan once a week or only separate data sets, you will see that you have a constant flow. And all the connectors for scanning all these different data sources are included with the base of the Azure Purview platform. On top of that platform, we have the data studio, the Purview Studio, and that's more like Synapse Analytics or Machine Learning Studio. That's more the studio where you can do all the things. And in that studio, we can easily search, browse, and our details. We have a kind of a management center. You do see private endpoints. That's really hot off the press, just released last night. We can do the automatic classification, and we can also create our own classifications, which I will show you in a demo as well, which will be very easy. For example, if there are some classifications which are not by default, you can create your own. and of course that Linux extraction from, for example, Purview, from Synapse or Data Factory. On top of that, so that's included with the platform, which everybody will get for the price. And then we have the catalog. So the business glossary is more the C1 catalog, and that's more for the producers and the consumers, and for the data officers and the security officers, we have more the assets that they know what kind of data lives in their data estate, but also what kind of sensitive data lives in there. So now we have handled these different features from Purview. We have also, what's very important for Azure Purview, are the different roles we can define on the Azure Purview platform. If there are some people already started, like I think in June or July last year, or even earlier, they who joined the private previews or the public previews and never upgraded their platform, they don't have this, because every Purview catalog, which is created after August 18th, they have collections. And what can we do with collections? I can repeat everything what's on the screen, but actually the collection admin is the owner of the whole Purview account. And he can do almost everything, and can also be assigned from the Azure Purview, from the Azure portal, instead of only in the account. Then the second one is the data source admin. Of course, that person can manage data sources and data scans. And we have a data curator, and that can perform create, read, and modify, and delete actions on a catalog. And for the data objects, but also to establish relationships between these objects. And the last one is a data reader. And of course, that one can only read the data and cannot modify anything. If you look to that control, because I know I went a little bit fast, but if you look to this, it's easier to explain. So we have on top of the collection admin, that's the Contoso in this case. And then you can see, for example, with the revenue, that we can restrict people to see the data assets which are living in the collection revenue. And this setup has been done by departments, but you can also do it by data centers. You can also create collections by a kind of type, by source type. And you can also, what I already explained, exclude people or to restrict to see data from there. If you're in the collection admin, you always inherit, your rights are inherit all the way below until that restricted application. I do see a question. Maybe I can. Oh, question for later. Okay. So Purview, access control, and then before I will show you a little bit more about what is in that studio, I will explain you a little bit about the pricing. Currently, we have a holistic data map pricing, and that means that the default pricing for is one capacity unit, and that one capacity unit will cost you 35 euro cents per hour, and you cannot switch it off. So if you start, you have always a default base of costs. And that capacity unit supports a request up to 25 data map operations per second and includes storage up to 2 GB of metadata about the data assets. I know, you're lost. So how does it work? So what I already said, the one is the default, and it has 25 operations throughput and 2 GB of metadata. So for example, if I'm using 25 operations per second and I have 4 GB of metadata stored, I always will pay 2. So if you look to this diagram, you will see that the red line is the storage or the operations per second. So between 4 and 5 p.m. This afternoon, I have scanning my data, and I was using 150 operations per second. So that are the scan operations which are done. And I'm using about 6 GB of metadata. That means that I have to pay between 4 and 5, probably, if you look to the schedule on the right, 6 data map capacity units. And based on that metadata from 6 GB, I always pay 3 capacity units per hour. So that means if you calculate that, that's €1 per hour. So that's 24 euros per day, etc., etc., etc. On top of that data map, we have scanning and classification. So for Power BI, that's still free. SQL Server is still free, and the other data sources you'll pay about 54 euro cents per vCar hour. And then on top of that, we have still some other stuff that we call other features, and these other features that are resource sets. So the resource sets are actually, if you look, for example, to a data lake, and you have year, month, day, and in that day you have some files extended, and all these files are the same. That's we call a data set. So instead of publishing every file as a separate file, they are grouped together, or aggregated is called in Azure Purview. So seeing all these prices, let's have a calculation. So as a base, we have Azure Purview, the data map. Let's do a simple one. One capacity unit per hour, so 730 hours a month. That will cost me about 260 or 257 euros a month. And I have done nothing. So if you switch it on, if you have an MSDN subscription, you can live for that about 14, 15 days. And then your MSDN subscription will be suspended because you have only 150 or 130 euros. The next part is scanning and classifications. So assume we will do 4 scans, and that 4 scans, that will take 2 hours. They will use 32 vCores per hour. That means that will cost, and why I'm taking 4 scans, I'm only scanning once a week. Will cost you an extra 140 euros. Then we have the other resources, some scans regarding our data sets or the resource sets will also be an amount. So I think if you don't do stupid things with your Azure Purview, it will cost you around 400. But that's really low level. The metadata is really going high. If you have a lot of data in your data lake, if you have a lot of resource, the metadata will grow. So mostly my advice will be, I think it will cost your customer around 1,000 euro a month to start with. But if you compare that, for example, to other products, I do see some other people in the call, but I don't know exactly pricing. But what they said, there's only 12,000 euros a year, and that's really compared to other products, really not that much compared to the functionality we have into the system. So we know a lot of things about Purview now, and on top of what he explained, we have that studio. So let's do a quick round tour of that studio. Once you have logged in, you will see that we have a single centralized place that provides that unified experience. Microsoft is trying to get a unified experience with all his products. Look to Synapse Analytics. It looks to Data Factory. You will see that we are getting the same look and feel for all our products. So this unified experience will be the single get-in for all the data producers, the consumers, the data, and the security officers. In that screen, we have always the updates. I always advise you check what kind of new things are in there. Sometimes it's a little bit late, and sometimes there are things released I never knew before, and that's the same. That option is there as well for Synapse Analytics. We can easily switch accounts so that you can create multiple accounts within your environment, and then you can easily switch, like you can do with your workspaces for Synapse Analytics as well if you're using them. The notifications, so what you are doing, what kind of scans are running, what kind of data sources are created. Feedback, that's the most important option there is. So if you have feedback, leave it there. The product teams are really, really happy to get that feedback and to make the product even more better. Then we have some metrics on how many data sources we have, on how many assets, how many glossary terms we have. we have that search bar. I already explained that we can easily find or search for assets within our catalog. Then we have some key activities or the recent entities, or so what I've done for the latest, and the main parts, or the browse assets, glossary, and the knowledge center, that are the key activities within our home page. And like Synapse Analytics, we have also some useful links, but also on the left side, as you can see in here, we have the activity hub. So I already explained that the data catalog hub, or the activity with all these things on the screen. And we have a data map where we can manage our glossary terms. That's also on the data catalog page. The map, we can create collections. That's the hierarchy you want to define within your organization, where we can define these data sources. We can create the setup scans, and we can also create the integration runtimes over there to connect to external data, or even to create our own Azure hosted integration runtime, which is new as of today. We have the insights, where we have reporting on our data, and the management tab, where we can define all the security, where we can connect our Azure Data Factory engines or factories to read the Lineage data from there, and we can also connect to data share connections. So if you're not familiar with data share is a Azure data service where you can easily share data sets with other people to be used in almost near real-time functionality. So what I will do, let's do a quick introduction of Azure Purview in the studio before we continue.
You go, yes. I want to get Arno's question in there as well. So Arno was mentioning that last year in the preview periods, it was the case that if you manually updated an automatic classification, it would no longer automatically update. Is this still the case, or has this been resolved?
I really don't know, because if I use a standard classification, so I will go in a little bit in there, Arno. What I'm always doing, if I want to create another classification, I don't think you can update a classification. You have to create a new classification, a custom classification. And once you have created that custom classification, you have to assign it to a scan rule set as well. But I will show you in a bit how that works. And hopefully I can clear that out for you if that's still the situation or not. So in the demo after this one, yeah?
Yeah, I don't remember if it was the classifications exactly, but it was some sort of case where there was a field that you could populate automatically, but then sometimes you'd want to update or overrule it, and then it sort of get orphaned in the sense that it would not be updated or included in scan updates or something anymore. So
yeah, I think I will handle that part. So yeah. I will hopefully you will get a flashback. Oh yeah, that was what I was meaning.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
You have more for me?
One question on data lineage and Power BI specifically, but I'm assuming that we'll get to this later on.
Yeah. I will do that. Yeah.
Yep.
So the scanning and I will do that. So I will switch my screen. What I explained. So let's find a Purview account and let's create a new account. So once I have created an account, it's very important I can define my subscription. Of course, that's pretty normal. I can assign that to a resource group, and I can define, of course, the name I want to have. It doesn't matter, test. Sorry. Very important over here. I can define my location, and like if your people are using Synapse Analytics, you know that we have there also a managed resource group name. You have that managed resource group name in here as well. In that managed resource group, A default storage account will be created, and the Event Hub namespace will be created, which will be used by Purview, but also will be used by the API, the Atlas API. So that's one of the APIs which you can call under the hood of Purview, will be used for that. Besides that, we can create some private endpoints as well for the account, for the portal and ingestion, or only for the account on the portal. And that means that you have to create, for example, based on your VNet and the correct subnet, you have the private endpoint to your blob storage, to your storage queue, and to the service bus, to the Event Hub. And then you get a more secure environment. On the moment you enable this option, you cannot connect anymore to your Purview account. Then you need also to create a point-to-site or site-to-site or express route connection to get into that account. So even through the portal, you cannot access it anymore if you enable that account or the portal part. Of course, you can define tags to specify to which cost center or departments that Purview accounts belong. And if you directly want to create these private endpoints, that's in here. So later on at the end of the session today, I will explain what they released last night. So that's not the private endpoints, that's already managed private endpoints for that. So let's dive into the Purview account. As you can see, when I open the Purview account, you will see that I have a Purview account. I have the platform size 1. If you have an account created before that August 18th, then the default was 4 capacity units. So that means if you didn't do anything, you already it will cost you more than €1,000 a month. And then a lot of people like, help! I will delete it directly, because even all the private preview members were charged for that amount as well. Then we have that managed resource, what I just explained. So that's the storage account where a part of the scans is happening, and the Event Hub namespace where the Atlas API connects to. The networking part, so you can deny the public network access. This is my demo environment, so I'm not going to deny everything, because then I'm only charging a lot of money to do that. Then we have the private endpoints and also the ingestion endpoints, which I will explain you in a bit. We can define the managed identities in here, and that's actually all. And then we can also define that root collection permissions. You can add one in here, which will be later on visible in that account. So let's open the account. So this is the main page where everybody is getting in. So what I explained, you can see these updates. You can see that we have now DB2 and we have Snowflake, and the billing has started as of November. You can switch easily between these accounts. So I have 2 accounts. I can switch between that one and that one easily. If you have more than that, and I think there is a maximum of 10 accounts per subscription or something, or a little bit less. I don't know the exact amount, but there's a limitation. The notifications, and of course, if you have feedback, you can leave it over there. But let's go into the data activity hubs. So we have the assets part, and I will go in a bit, a little bit deeper. But there we have these collections, and we have the different sources which are scanned. Going back to there, we have also the glossary over there, where we can add these business rules, the data map, and in the data map we can add new sources. We have the collections, we can define the classifications, the classification rules, and how to create that. I first will explain a little bit more on that one, and then I will do in my next demo, I'll do a little bit more. This is the collection overview. So in this case, I've done it by source, but you can also, if I zoom in a little bit in, you can do it by data center, and you can also create your own collection based on that. depends on what the customer wants to see. And if you want to see it in a table view, then you can see it like this as well. Then we have that inside part where we can easily view our assets, and you will see it's still in preview. So that's one of the parts which is still in preview, because sometimes if not everything is working perfectly, yes, it is working. So the reports which you are seeing on the screen are working perfectly, but sometimes you will get an error on the right top that something went wrong while everything went okay. But that's more a background thing. We have the scan, so you can see, okay, how many scans I've done, how many succeeded, how many failed. You will see that I'm not doing that much scans because otherwise my wallet will be really empty at the end of the month. The glossary terms, where you can see, okay, with assets, without assets, but also the incomplete terms, the classification. So classifications means, okay, I have data based on US zip codes, phone numbers, cities, person names, but I will get a little bit in that one later. The sensitivity labels, you will see policy management. I will explain later because that's in a private preview as well, or it's in a preview and you can opt in for that, and so it's available in my account. And then the last one is the management, where at the end of the session I will do the manage private endpoints, the credentials I can explain, the data share connections where you can add your data share, where you can add your data factory, and the metrics are in the Azure Monitor. So one thing you don't see over here, so in that management tab, you are not creating your Synapse environment. So for data factory, you have to add it here. For Synapse, you have to add it on the Synapse part, which I will do later on as well. So now we have handled a little bit what is in that studio. I'm gonna go a little bit more in detail what we can do with all these different activity hubs. So I will switch back my screen, and I'm gonna talk about a little more about the Azure or the Purview data map. In that data map, already said we have that we can do that scanning of all these different sources. So I think we have about 35 data sources currently into the system. We have these collections, what I already explained. So it is easily to register a new data source and to add that to one of these collections. Very important to know, if you assign it to the wrong collection, you cannot move it anymore. So then you have to delete that data set or that data source and to add it new, and then add it to the correct collection, so that there is no movement between these collections. I already said the 30, really a lot of data source. They have also a really great connector, Erwin. But Amazon, you can scan, you can, how they call it, you can scan your whole Azure resource. That means, okay, I can directly scan all my blob storage, all my data lakes, all my SQL servers very easily. And that's the same for Synapse Analytics, that you directly can scan your serverless databases, your dedicated SQL pools pretty easy. And what I already said, we have that functionality with Microsoft 365, where you can define a new label, and then you can enable the Azure Purview asset over here. And that means that that label will be pushed down to Purview as well, once you have the correct license for Microsoft 365. On top of that, all these data maps, we have that 200 and plus built-in data classifiers. I think when we started with that, we had only 100, and they are adding all the time new data classifiers as well, which are built in. So we have a lot of for Europe, we have for the Netherlands, for Belgium, for Germany. So there are really a lot of Europe classifiers getting in there as well. Once we have created a data map, we can start create a scan. And this is an example from a scan with a data lake. We can do a scan manually. We can do it scheduled. And if you do a schedule, you can say, I want it weekly, bi-weekly, only the first day of the month, or etc., etc., and in which time. And also you can define a time window or a date window. So I want to have these scans every week until the end date. And the scans are run, if you do a scheduled run, there are automatically incremental scans to save these scanning costs. And you can also do, of course, a full scan, and you can define within your data lake, for example, which kind of folders you want to scan or which folders you want to exclude of your scanning. Some folders, I always advise you to scan every folder, because then that data lives in your data estate and you want to know what's happening in there. So then once we have done the data map, we have that catalog, and in that catalog we can start looking for data. So we can easily find everything about customers, we can find everything about our business glossary, and we can also see more about our data lineage with all these sources, the owners, the lifecycle, and the transformations which are happening. So if we look to that this picture, we can click on the browse assets. That's very easy. And what he showed you in the previous part, once you click there, you will see directly what kind of resources are living within your account. If you see, for example, a SQL database over here, it doesn't mean that you have added that source as a SQL database within your system, because if I have a data lineage connection between source A and source B, and I don't have added these sources to my system, you will see them as assets, but they are not classified, so you cannot scan these data. I will explain in a bit. So I can click on SQL Server. Once I've clicked on SQL Server or SQL database, I can see all the different databases which are living on top of that SQL Server or in that SQL Server. If I click on the database, I can click on the schema. And once I click on the schema, I will see directly all the different tables and views which resides in that database. And then once I've done that, I can really go deeper and deeper to see all the classifications. And I will handle that in a live demo because that's easier to see. So then the next part is, once we have scanned that data, so that's one of the important things, we need to scan the data. We need to have a copy activity from A to B, whatever kind of copy activity. It can be a copy activity in Synapse or in Data Factory. It can be a mapping data flow in Data Factory or Synapse, which can create that lineage for us. So in here, I'm creating data from my data lake. It's copied. It's all the way to the end. And I will show you a little bit more decent parts. But the only thing what you are seeing here are two pictures. And I think one of the questions was already there. It ends the SQL table, and it starts with Power BI also in a SQL table. And you want to actually have this lineage connected to each other, because that's in all the demos you will see, which is Microsoft, they are presenting. So and all the lineage which you are here on the screen are in there, so that's you can use for your lineage. And this is the really lineage you want to see. So I have my dashboard, and I want to go back down to all the end of the files of your blob stores. There are some ways to create that. I'm not going to explain that in this session, because I think I can spend a whole day or a whole session on that. There are some APIs, and there are some Python notebooks or libraries which you can use to create all these different connections. But you have to create it for every customer part, because you will really have to know, okay, this is dataset A, and I have to connect dataset B to each other, and you have to create a kind of a missing part in there. But that's a little bit too technical for today. And the last one is the scanning part, or the insight part with all the data in there. And then that scanning will really help the chief data officer to quickly understand his data at large, but also get some insight about where the sensitive data resides. So how many Power BI reports, or how many data sets, or how many files do have sensitive data. The next part is that we have a great integration between Purview and Power BI. So what we can do once a report is in Power BI, we can discover the whole Power BI tenant to our Purview account. We can directly start searching and browsing to the different reports and dashboards, and we have some enhanced metadata, lineage, and sensitivity labels, which we can read also from Power BI. There are 3 things you need to do to get that working. And yes, if you tried that like 2 months ago or 10 weeks ago, not everything was working perfectly, and that's, I think, fixed at the end. I think it was the end of November. So there are 3 options. You have to in the Power BI. So you need to be, of course, a Power BI admin. You have to go to the tenants, to the Power BI workspace, and then in the admin portal, you can have 3 options. The allow service principals to read only Power BI admin APIs, the enhanced APIs with the detailed metadata, and of course the last one to get that DEX mesh, the DEX and the measurable expressions. So that last one is not working 100% yet. So, but if you enable directly, once it's enabled, then the Power BI scan will also read the DEX measure or the DEX expression from your measure in Power BI, in your Power BI report, back to the Purview, your Purview account. So that means that you will get something what's on the screen, that you will see, okay, I have these kind of measures, I have these kind of tables within my Power BI data set, and the classifications which are belonging to that item. So now we have a connection Purview to Power BI. We have also a great connection between Synapse and Purview, of course, to get that unified experience. If you look to this picture, data share, Purview, Power BI, machine learning, a really unified experience. And when I was creating this picture, I think, when was it? I think 7 years ago or something, I went to PAS Summit. Maybe a lot of people have been there or have been not in Shadow. And then they introduced Power BI, that it was really connecting also to the, well, how would you call it? Walk with your head in the cloud and your feet on the ground. So your feet on the ground like was the on-premise part, and then the head in the cloud was Power BI there. And then we can deal with some gateways. And I don't know, that was just like, okay, but like 7 years ago, they were trying to get everything together, and now you will see more and more is getting connected as well. Because besides this picture, I can also add already a new one. We have a Cosmos link so that we directly can connect to Azure Cosmos. We have a direct link to Azure Dataverse. So more and more services are going to get integrated in Synapse Analytics. And once they are integrated in Synapse Analytics, we can easily scan them as well with Purview. So like SQL 2022 have the same functionality as Cosmos or as Dataverse, but they're easily linked and can also be easily scanned by Purview, while SQL 2022 is an on-premise system, can be an on-premise system. So if you want to integrate that Purview within your Synapse Analytics, it's pretty easy. Just go to Synapse Analytics, go to the Activity Hub Management Center, and you can connect to Purview. And once you have done that, all your data lineage will be sent to Purview so that you can see what the lineage will be from your source to your destination, and what kind of transformations happens in between, or what kind of fields has been eliminated. So for example, I have a table with customer, there was a customer name in there, and now I have a destination, there's no customer name anymore, name in there anymore. You can see that in the flow. And how can you check that easily? This is the same working for Data Factory as well. If you do, if you go to your monitoring within Data Factory or Synapse, there is a lineage status option, and if you click on that one, you will see, okay, this source is supported or this source was not supported. Very important to know, if you want to start tracking your data from a SQL server or Azure SQL database, it doesn't matter. The only thing what is working are completely full tables. So the only option is there, the table option. So if you do a select star from table X where date is bigger than that, that doesn't work. A stored procedure doesn't work. So only complete tables that will work fine. Just take that into account, and they're really working hard to get that solved in the near future. So there are already some previews for that one. And very important to know as well, Azure Purview drops Lineage if the source or destination is using unsupported data storage system. So if I have an FTP server over here and I'm tracking the data to a data lake, the data lake can be supported, but that FTP server is not supported. So I think we can handle a lot of cool stuff within the demo. So I'm going to switch to some screens again. And then Benny, if there are questions during the demo, I'm happy to answer them. So going back to that portal, let's first start with a data map. So for example, if I want to register a new data source, I can click on register. I can, for example, select my Cosmos DB. I can say, okay, this is my Cosmos DB link service. I always call link service Cosmos 0_demo. I can create, select my subscription. I can create the account, and very important, what I already said before, you now directly have to choose the correct collection, because if I select my main collection, I cannot move it back to another collection. So I'm not going to save that one, because otherwise I have a new Cosmos DB, which already have created in there. And once you have created these sources, what I said, you can see that map overview, the table overview, and you can create even more collections. So what I've done before I started to create this account, I first have created these collections, and then I've added these sources in there. And you have these role assignments, and what I already said before, if you have a lower hierarchy, you can restrict the inherit permissions so that nobody can access that part, or only some people can access that part. And there you have the collection admin, the data source admin, I already explained. So that is the everybody in that group can add new data sources. The curators can, of course, do a lot of stuff in there to add, and you will see that also my Synapse workspace, my ADF workspace, so the service branches are automatically added in there as well. We have the reader, so I can read the data, and this is a new part, which I'll explain a little bit later, that are the policy authors. Then you can go to classifications, and I don't know if Arne was saying, okay, if you go in here, then you edit something, then something was not working. I've never tried that one, but the only thing you can change in here is the description. I'm not advising to change these default classifications. I prefer to add new custom classifications. And how does it work? The first thing you need to do to add a new classification is to create a classification rule. And what does a rule mean? Also here we have the default rules by the system, and we have the custom rules. In this case, I have created a rule, the Netherlands postal code, and if I want to see what is happening in there, I can check. Okay, I have the classification name. I have the description. I can click on continue, and then you will see, okay, I can add it, or I can add the data pattern through a file which exists with the scanning patterns, or I can add my own pattern. I can define the threshold, and I can also define a column pattern. So it's or and. So you can, if you can see it here as well, if the data match that and the column name matched, then apply the classification. So if I leave this blank, then it's only data pattern. But if I filled in two, then it will use both patterns to scan, to apply that classification. And you will see that once I have created that custom classification, I can go back to my classification. I can add a new classification. And for example, I have here the Netherlands postal code, and I can add that specified. Oh, sorry. Once I've done this, sorry, the other way around, I did it wrong. My apologies. In here, I have to add that classification name, of course. Very important over here, you can create as many custom classifications if you want, but they are not assigned by default to your scans. So we have also the option scan rule sets. What you can do in there, as you can see, these are all the default scans which are created by Microsoft. And if you create a scan, which I will show you in a minute, you will see that I can choose all these different scans. But if I want to have a SQL Server scan, which will also apply my own classifications, then I have to add them. So, for example, I click on New. I say, I want to scan all the SQL databases. This is my demo. My demo set. I can do a description. I can say continue. Okay, listen. These are all the different system rules I have. Do you want to apply them as well? Yes, I want to apply them. And besides that, I want to also apply all my custom classifications to that one as well. So in total, I have 209 classification rules defined. I can go continue. I can even add another pattern which I can exclude, or I can create my pattern. And now I can later on, if I select a SQL database, I can use that demo set custom or scan rule set as well. So going directly to that scanning part, I can go back to my data map. And once I click on, for example, SQL Server over here, you will see that I have an option over here, scans, and I can create a new scan. So if I click on a new scan, I can select how do you want to connect. Do you want to connect to auto-resolve? And if you have defined your managed virtual network, you can use it as well. So let's use, for example, this one. I'm going to call it the weekly, how do you call it? InSpark config.db, because I know that the database exists there as well. Config.db. Through that runtime, I can select the database. So I have selected that database. I have the Purview credential. So that Purview credential, that's actually the same. That's your Purview account, and that needs to have a database reader rights on top of your database. So you can create a user, in this case, your Purview account from external provider, and then you can add the database reader rights on that one. But if you click on that see more, it's perfectly described. I can click, I can say test connection to see if everything is working. Yeah, everything is working. I can click on continue. I can select all the different tables I want to have. If you select them all and you add new tables, they are automatically added. And now you can see that I have the detail set over here. I have my database custom, and I have my data demo set scan rule set. I can click on details over there, what it's going to do. And then I can select that one. I can say continue. And here we are in the trigger or the schedule. We can define the time zone, the recurrence, and the time when it should start. And you can also, what I already explained before, you can define the end date of your recurrence. It's very easy to handle the scan. And once you have done that, so every month, every week, I want to have that scan every Monday, and I want to have that at, for example, 7 in the morning, and I want to have that in the, where are you? Amsterdam zone, and can say continue. I can now save and run, or I can just save it. And once I click on save and run, it will start scanning my data. And now you will see that it's a scheduled scan with this scan rule set. And when it's finished, you will see that the time when it's finished. And if you click on that scan, you will see that all the scans you have done previously will be there. So I have incremental scans, I have full scans. And if you click on that run ID, you can also see how many assets are classified, discovered, and how many are ingested, and how many relationships are ingested, and are there any exceptions. So are there incompatible data fields in there which cannot be scanned, or etc., etc. What I didn't explain to you, if you, for example, want to scan a Hive metadata store, so you want to read the metadata store of your Databricks cluster, you have to create, of course, an integration runtime, which will connect, and then will connect to your source. And within your scan, I will just show you, we have to connect to that that integration runtime. And what we can do also more, we can also assign credentials. So in the management tab, we have a credential part where we can add a key vault. So in this case, I have a key vault created, and I can create all the different credentials. So you can leave the password or the account key or whatever you need to store. You can leave it in the key vault so that you have a secure environment and that there are no passwords used within your assignment. So I have connect to the Babylon server. That's the Purview server. I can connect to Hives. I have a Cosmos, and within that Cosmos, you can see that I have a connection to that key vault, and that this is my secret name. So if I want to scan the data, I can use that Cosmos key to connect to my Cosmos database. And that's the same, for example, if you want to select your Hive. You have your username, but that's something you can get out of your Databricks, and then you have the password, which is used over here.
Erwin, one question before you go on. I don't ask the question specifically on which permissions do you need to set for the Purview managed service identity, so for the service user, to do the scan on the local system itself.
Okay, I will, let me 2 seconds. It's very easy. I just open my Synapse because I have a standard script for it and I can show it you on the screen, and then it's also recorded. So if you want to use that script, so you can add that Purview account or the managed identity, you can add it to a security group and then define the correct rights to your service group. But you can also say, okay, listen, create user, and then your Purview account, and then in this case, I think it will be this one, create and then alter role DB data reader. And this you need to do on every database. So I think there's a block somewhere that you can iterate for every database, because if you have 100 databases, you can write a PowerShell script which will do that for you. And you can also use a group. So if you instead of user or instead of you log in, you can create user security group X from external provider and then alter role to that security group. Does that give the correct answer?
Yeah. That does. Cool. Thank you.
Going back. So what I didn't explain yet is.
Hold on, Erwin. I don't know. Ask another question. Why does DB owner also need to be given?
Oh no, this is not. You have seen that, but this is the part. So this is not the part. Because I only need to read
data reader is enough.
I was just playing around because actually there should be another group here. Here should be a security group and that security group needs to write. So I was just playing around yesterday evening to get some managed VNets working. This is the case. Yes. Going back to the data catalog, I explained that we have some glossaries. We can define also a hierarchy in here. So we have aggregations where you can say what does it mean. Aggregation means compiling. Okay, this is just a simple glossary term, but you can define your business rules over here. And once you have assigned these business rules, then you can, for example, go to customer. You can just click on customer, and then everything what belongs to customer will be shown over here. So I have 110 results. I can define an object type. I can, for example, click on tables, then only my tables are left over. I can click on SQL, and only my SQL tables are left over. So if I click, for example, on this customer, I have you can see that I have some classifications over here, which can be assigned. I can edit that table, and what I can do now, I can directly say, okay, listen, that this is a glossary term, demo sales, for example, and then this is the definition in there. I can assign contacts in here. So in this case, I am the expert. And I can also add an owner or a group of owners to the table. I can click on save. And the great thing is, once you are in here and you want to see, okay, what are the contacts, you can directly open an email over here and directly ask, okay, I have a question regarding the dataset customer. What does it mean? Whatever does it not mean? So if there is Lineage available, you will see it in here as well. Let's show you what I will do. I will show you a little bit more about that customer and based on that data lake. And now you will see that this is a direct path, but you have also this resource path. And then you will see, okay, I have a raw folder and then some directories, and then the year, month, day, and then the folder, and then the N, because this is just a date, the .parquet file, and they call it in Purview, they call it an aggregated property, where you see, okay, it's based on this file, and the metadata in that file is used to define the schema if it is in there, and is used to have the lineage when it is in there. Let's show you some Lineage. The easiest way to show you that is going to the catalog and browse all the assets we have. And yeah, I go to Synapse Analytics, and I can click on there, and I can click, for example, this is a copy activity from a blob storage from a file, and you will now see that I have some Lineage available. Wakey, it should be there. So the properties, and I have some Lineage in here where I can say, okay, I have a file somewhere in a blob storage, or in this case in a blob resource set. It's copied by a copy activity and is sent to a data lake. And I can click on the details as well in here. And in this part, I can directly switch to the asset. So I can directly connect to that file. And that file was coming from here. It was a copy activity, and it copied to a year, month, day file, and it copied to another year, month, day file. Probably something has changed why both are there. And if you think, okay, this is wrong or whatever, you can easily, that's also new, that was not before, you can also delete that asset, and the next time it scans, it will have the correct information. So sometimes when testing, you will see a lot of wrong Lineage, and then you just delete it and scan it again. That's easy to set it up. And if you want to see more from the whole Lineage, the whole flow, I will show you as well. Let's have a dashboard, and then I will take this dashboard. And this is pretty cool looking. So we have a Power BI dashboard wide world importers. It's connecting to the report Purview, connecting to the lakehouse. This is the data is coming from the lakehouse, and the lakehouse are the views on top of your Delta Lake created. And there is no Lineage yet for that one. And we have the connection to our SQL database. And once you click on that data set, you can also switch to the asset. And you will see the Lineage, but also the schema. And there you will see all the metrics and even the description, which was in Power BI over there. And in the near future, if there was a DAX measurement, it will be shown there as well. Then we go to the inside part where we have all the different scans, and what's very easy is just click on view details, and then you will directly see all the scans which you have done. Going a little bit to the Synapse part where we can directly connect our Purview account, and if the Lineage is working, you will directly see it in here. And if you want to change it, it can be easily changed in here, and you can also directly create some management endpoints. And what I said before, if you have a pipeline, let me check if I have one. No. And you have a data flow over here, you have that option Lineage stated, and in here you will see not reported, because this is not supported. This is a pipeline which is doing, creates the Delta Lake functionality, and that's not supported. And I know that it's on the roadmap to be built. Let's just switch back a little bit to here. So because I do see that the time is getting out a little bit. We have some roadmap and some preview features coming in. Data quality, they're working on it, but there's nothing known on that one. The data privacy and data policies are more the same. I can show you a little bit later on that one. Master data management, the only thing I know is that they are looking to have another partner connected to it, or that they want to buy someone who can do that to integrate it. You can also enable Microsoft Defender for Cloud, so that you also can have your cloud center your cloud center of security defined on it, and you have that managed VNets. So going to that data policy part, I really I have some screenshots, and I can see you. I can show it a little bit live as well. But the great thing is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to show you live because that's easier. So what I want to say, you need to have an opt-in for this, and there are two other things. All the preview accounts are available, and you will see that this account, because that's the problem, it's only available in French Central. So that's why it's not in public preview or in GA status. If I go directly to my preview account, where are you? You can create policies. And the great thing of policies is, I'm just opening it. Is that you can assign rights to folders in your data lake. For example, you are allowed to read the raw folder in your data lake, and you are allowed to read the data lake folder. And I don't know why it is not working. Sometimes it will take a while to get that Synapse part in here. Oh, okay, cool. Don't like this. But I've been playing around with that. Oh, it's in there. I've been playing around with the managed VNets. So in here I have that preview account, and I'm going to that policy part. You will see that it is in preview as well. I will show you one policy. What you can do, you can say, okay, I have, for example, I have a couple of folders. I have that temp staging in my data lake. I have that raw folder in my data lake. I have the intermediate, and I have a folder within that intermediate container. I have a folder which is called allowed modify. On that allow modify, I have defined that you can, because if you click on edit, you can add policy statements, but you can say allow modify on data set, the folder allow modify for that group. So my data scientist is now allowed to add files in here and to read files in that folder. So if you look back to that part, so going to here, my folder over here, I have my containers. I can go to intermediate. I can read it, as you can see. I can try to upload the folder over here. And you will see that I have not any rights to do that. If I go into that folder, because that's I've not done the inherit part, I can say, okay, upload. And now I have the rights to upload a folder or a file. And if you go back in here, you will see that I'm allowed to do it in the container temp staging as well, and not allowed in here. So for the data lake, that's working perfectly. The only thing you need to do, you have to have that opt-in, which will be available. It's also in my slide deck. You can opt in for that. You have to have a data lake in the French region or Australia, I think. And you have to enable the option data use governance. And you can only do that once for that data lake. And there are some special settings. So if you want to start playing around with data governance or with that policy option, the first step is that you have to activate a kind of a policy enabled on your Azure portal. Then you have to create your data lake, and then you can start scanning. So you cannot use an existing data lake yet. And the last part for today is the managed VNet part. What's already showed you a little bit on that one. So what you need to do, we need to create an integration runtime. Oh, this is the... So we go back to management. We create a runtime, and that's just like a normal runtime you're used to. You can use a self-host or an Azure one. You can click on continue. You can enable the interactive authoring. So if you want scanning, you have to enable that or to test some stuff, and then you can create these managed VNets on that one, connected directly to your, for example, to your Synapse SQL part, to your SQL on demand part, and also your managed blob or your managed queue. So these are the integrated, the managed part. And the great thing is that you can start disabling all your external network activities, and it will all communicate over the backbone of from Microsoft, which creates you in a secure environment and prevents you from external access. I think it's some time if there are some questions left, because this part are really in preview. So the managed part are in public preview, and the policies you have to opt in for that one. And if you want to have more questions on policies, I'm happy to explain a little bit more during a call. So questions left, Benny?
Yep. I have a few questions left. So specifically going back into pricing. So Geert-Jan went to the Azure pricing page and saw that the same thing you mentioned as well, is that right now during preview, Power BI scanning is free for the limited time. Do you have an idea of how long this is going to be? And assuming the follow-up question, do you have an idea of how much of a price increase is coming after that, when the prices are actually charged?
I have no idea. The only thing I know from the product group is that a lot of these scannings will because what Microsoft is doing, if they announce a product GA, it's not like that you buy a car which is directly driving everything correctly, because they are still fixing things, are adding new things, are are getting all the feedback on the product. I think you know that, Benny, as well. And what I heard that the Power BI scanning will be free for the upcoming months before they have more finished the product that will be completely finished, so that the DAX measures are in there, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So sorry, no clue about it.
Yeah. Assuming, I mean, I don't have an answer as well. I'm assuming that it will be similar to other pricings that you already have for different scanning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then a question from Arno. I've got another one as well, but Arno wants to know that those data policies that you've shown, are they specific to data lakes right now, or can you potentially also cover access management for other sources?
Yeah, the only thing they can do, because I do see the question now, is data lake, blob storage, and SQL database.
Yeah, okay.
But the SQL database is a different opt-in than the data lake opt-in.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then Arno wants to know if it is possible to enrich or expand Lineage by adding metadata for quote unquote unsupported sources. So sources that are not in the native connectors that you have right now.
Yeah, what you need to do for that, you can use the Atlas API to add that lineage in there. So with Postman or whatever, you can do some PowerShell scripting. On our side, like these custom classifications you just saw, we are not adding these custom classifications by hand. We have a DevOps pipeline which is calling some Python node stuff to add it there. I think you have to search for the GitHub repo from Will Johnson, and he has a lot of Apache Spark Atlas connectors in there, and you can add a lot of Lineage there manual as well. And you can also add, there is someone who added as well that Lineage between Power BI and the SQL source. You know, that missing link. I think it is Will Johnson.
Yeah, I've got the link. I'll put it in the chat window. Yeah, my Bing Fu is still up to par.
One,
yeah, Arno's got it as well, I think. Yeah. Okay, good. Then I do have one last question, which is probably going to take it comes with a lot of ifs and it depends. It was specifically on the MSI, so the managed service identities. So Hirtiana raised the question and the concern that if you're doing everything with a single MSI, with a single identity, does that potentially not leave you open for a big security concern if it connects to all the different data sources, if it connects to all the data stores that you have in your organization?
If you have seen that, let me check. You don't need to use that managed identity because you can create your own credentials. So if you want to have a secure, a more secure environment, and if I go back to my SQL, if I just click on the one of these scans, add a scan, you will see that I can define what kind of credential I want to use. And in this case, I'm using the managed identity, but I can create also secret authentication or other authentications I want to have in there. So I can click on new and create another service principal, another SQL authentication, and you can create these authentication methods as long for all your different sources. So hopefully that will give you an answer on what it can do, and based on top of your purview, you can also I think your managed identity previews what we can do there as well, more and more, and the user assigned. So there are a lot of improvements based on that managed identity. What I can say, and no, you don't need to use that managed identity. There are other options to create your own applications or your own SQL authentications. Hopefully that will answer your question.
Yep. So let me check swiftly once again, but I think that we have all the questions. If we did not have all the questions, feel free to raise them now. But nope, I think we've got all the questions. Yep. Okay, so That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, Oscar. I cannot tell you everything.
Yeah, that's what I told in the chat window as well. I mean, everything that you can tell is public knowledge, and I'm pretty sure that you've covered all those things already. So let me switch off the recording now. All right.